Welcome to the endless series of videos where ChatGPT breaks down all of Trump's false claims. Now we're going to get straight to the point, but before we begin, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel right now while you're watching, and ring that bell for notifications so that you never miss out on any new videos, which I publish every single week. Now without further ado, let's get straight into the chat. Here we are. I'm not gonna start a new chat every time, so we're just continuing with the existing one. Now let's ask it for the first false claim of the day, and here it is. And we also left behind $85 billion worth of military equipment in Afghanistan, along with many American citizens were left behind. Many American citizens.
And we also left behind $85 billion worth of military equipment, along with many American citizens were left behind. Many American citizens.
The $85 billion figure is flat out wrong. That number refers to the total U.S. spending on training and equipping Afghan forces over 20 years, not equipment left behind during the withdrawal. Credible estimates suggest the value of leftover equipment was closer to $7 billion, much of which was non-operational or destroyed by U.S. forces before leaving. As for Americans left behind, fewer than 200 remained in Afghanistan after the withdrawal, and most were evacuated shortly thereafter. Trump supporters might defend this claim by pointing to the botched withdrawal and its devastating optics. However, wildly inflating numbers like 85 billion and implying many citizens were abandoned serves only to mislead and stir outrage. The withdrawal deserves criticism for its failures, but Trump's exaggerated claims twist the facts into fear-mongering rather than constructive accountability. This isn't just an error, it's a calculated effort to mislead. Alright, got it. As usual, we're dealing with some over-the-top exaggeration from Trump. From 7 to 85 billion? Why not? Let's call it Trumpification, or maybe to Trumpify something. We'll definitely need a special word for that. Alright, now let's move on to the next claim. We have more liquid gold, oil, and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world. More than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia.
We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia.
The U.S. does not have more oil reserves than Saudi Arabia or Russia, let alone Venezuela, which leads the world in proven reserves. While the U.S. is a leader in oil and gas production thanks to advanced fracking techniques, proven reserves are a completely different metric. Saudi Arabia and Venezuela dwarf U.S. reserves by orders of magnitude, and Russia's gas reserves remain far ahead of America's. Trump supporters might defend this as patriotic enthusiasm, highlighting America's energy production growth during his term. But there's no excuse for twisting facts to create a false sense of dominance. Celebrating energy innovation is one thing, fabricating numbers to mislead is another. This is not an honest mistake, it's a deliberate exaggeration designed to bolster an illusion of unmatched American supremacy. Alright, good. The claim is false. But why do you think he's doing this? I mean, he's gotta know that even a little fact-checking would uncover the lie, so why not just say, like, we have more liquid gold than many countries in the world, instead of any? It seems like he's doing it on purpose, but why? Go ahead and leave your guess in the comments down below. Alright, now let's get to the next claim. 99% of COVID-19 cases are totally harmless, results that no other country can show because no other country has testing that we have, not in terms of the numbers or in terms of the quality.
But now we have tested almost 40 million people. By so doing, we show cases, 99% of which are totally harmless. Results that no other country can show because no other country is testing that we have, not in terms of the numbers or in terms of the quality.
The claim that 99% of cases are totally harmless is highly misleading. While many COVID-19 cases are mild, data from reputable health organizations like the WHO and CDC indicate that about 15 to 20% of cases result in severe illness, requiring hospitalization, and roughly 2% of cases are fatal. Additionally, many people with so-called mild cases suffer long-term symptoms known as long COVID. As for testing, the US did ramp up COVID-19 testing significantly, but Trump's assertion that no other country could match the US in terms of testing quality and numbers is inaccurate. Several nations, including South Korea and Germany, implemented more comprehensive testing and contact tracing strategies earlier in the pandemic. Trump supporters may argue this statement reflects optimism and an attempt to reassure the public. However, minimizing the virus's risk and overstating testing success serve to downplay the pandemic's severity, ultimately misinforming Americans about the true stakes. Alright, this claim is 99% false. Now let's move on to the next one, and here it is. And there were no guns involved. And these are all gun owners. You know, these are people that have guns, but they never went to the Capitol with guns.
And there were no guns involved. And these are all gun owners. You know, these are people that have guns, but they never went to the Capitol with guns. It's really amazing. It's a very sad, I think it's a very sad day in the country's life.
Guns were indeed present during the January 6th attack. Law enforcement arrested individuals carrying firearms, including a man with a loaded pistol and another with an assault rifle and ammunition nearby. The U.S. Capitol Police and FBI also reported that tactical gear and other weapons were used by some rioters. Trump's assertion that no guns were involved ignores these documented facts. His supporters might argue that he was unaware of the specifics, as no widespread gunfire occurred, and his focus might have been on downplaying the event. However, as president, Trump had access to law enforcement briefings that detailed arrests and weapon confiscations. It's hard to justify ignorance given the public nature of these facts. This claim appears to be a deliberate attempt to minimize the severity of the attack rather than a simple misunderstanding. Got it. ChatGPT believes that Trump couldn't possibly be unaware of this, making the claim a deliberate falsehood. Now, without further interruptions, let's check out the next claim. We have seized a record amount of drugs and deported a record number of gang members.
We have seized a record amount of drugs and deported a record number of gang members.
Official statistics from DHS and ICE clearly show that deportations peaked under the Obama administration, not Trump. In 2012, over 400,000 deportations were recorded, whereas during Trump's presidency, deportations never exceeded 267,000 annually, with 2019 seeing roughly 267,000 removals. As for drug seizures, while they varied year to year, there is no consistent evidence of record-breaking quantities being confiscated during Trump's time in office. Trump supporters might argue that his focus was on deporting violent criminals and enhancing border security rather than total deportations. They may also highlight his tough rhetoric on drug cartels. However, the numbers do not back up his assertion of achieving record figures. This claim is a clear exaggeration designed to overstate accomplishments rather than reflect reality. Well, yet another exaggeration from Donald Trump. Alright, let's move on to the next one, and here it is. We have a trade deficit of $500 billion a year with China. It's not something we can live with.
But we have a problem with China. They've created a trade deficit, and I really blame our representatives and, frankly, our preceding presidents for this. They have a trade deficit of $500 billion a year. It's not something we can live with.
The U.S. trade deficit with China in 2017 was about $375 billion, not $500 billion. Trump's figure inflates the actual number by over $100 billion. Even the total U.S. trade deficit with the world was roughly $552 billion, making it impossible for the China-specific deficit to be $500 billion. His supporters might argue that Trump is speaking broadly, highlighting trade imbalances and China's economic dominance, which have harmed U.S. industries. They may also view his exaggeration as a rhetorical device to stress the urgency of addressing the issue. However, the numbers don't lie. The actual deficit, while substantial, is significantly lower than Trump's claim. This kind of distortion oversimplifies a complex issue and misleads the public about the scale of the problem. It's a clear case of exaggeration rather than an honest reflection of the facts. So it was over $100 billion less than the claim of $500 billion. Alright, we've still got about 40,000 false claims to go, so let's not waste another second and move on to the next one. But when you have windmills, the whales are washing up on shore. So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year.
But where you have them, the whales are washing up on shore.
Right.
So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year. You know what it is? I want to be a whale psychiatrist. It drives the whales frickin' crazy.
This claim is false and lacks any scientific basis. NOAA data shows that whale strandings along the East Coast have been part of an unusual mortality event, or UME, since 2016, primarily caused by ship strikes and fishing gear entanglements. There is no credible evidence linking offshore wind turbines to whale deaths. Trump's assertion of one whale in 50 years is fabricated, as strandings have occurred sporadically for decades. Similarly, the claim of 18 whales in the last year is an exaggeration not supported by verified data. Trump supporters might defend this claim as a border metaphor for his opposition to wind energy, portraying him as a defender of traditional energy sources. They may justify his exaggerations as part of his blunt style meant to draw attention to environmental concerns. However, this claim doesn't hold up to scrutiny and distorts facts to create a false narrative against renewable energy. What? Where does he even find all this information? And anyway, the claim is false, and let me know in the comments if you'd prefer Trump as a whale psychiatrist instead of being president. Now we're about to get to the next one, but before we move on, I just want to give you a quick reminder. If you're enjoying this video, you should be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel right now if you haven't already. Believe me, it's super important because it helps YouTube to understand that you love this content and that you want more of it. And also, take a look at this join button. It's a way to support the channel directly, and it only costs a couple dollars a month, so you can join anytime, but of course, only if you want to. Thanks in advance, and with all that being said, let's move on to the next one. Back to the chat, and here's the next claim. Nobody's been tougher on Russia than I am. Between the military and the oil and all of the other things that I've done, the aluminum tax, they send us a lot of aluminum, and I put tariffs on aluminum coming in.
Nobody's been tougher to Russia than I am. You can ask President Putin about that. There's been nobody between the military and the oil and all of the other things that I've done. The aluminum tax, they send us a lot of aluminum, and I put tariffs on aluminum coming in. Nobody's been tougher. Nobody's even been close to as tough as me.
Trump's record on Russia shows deference, not toughness. The aluminum tariffs were not aimed specifically at Russia, but were part of a broader trade policy affecting multiple countries. Meanwhile, Trump delayed imposing congressionally mandated sanctions on Russia, downplayed its election interference, and even sided with Putin over U.S. intelligence during the Helsinki summit. These actions are not hallmarks of toughness, they're evidence of accommodation. Trump supporters may argue that his administration's expulsion of Russian diplomats or increased military spending proves his hardline stance. They might defend his praise for Putin as part of a calculated strategy to maintain dialogue. However, the facts speak louder. Trump's rhetoric consistently downplayed Russia's behavior, and his actions often fell short of holding them accountable. Claiming to be the toughest on Russia is not just an exaggeration, it's a deliberate attempt to rewrite history. Alright, a deliberate attempt to rewrite history. Got it. By the way, let me know in the comments if you'd like ChatGPT to break down the 2016 election, including Russian interference and all of that stuff. If you're interested, we'll definitely cover it in one of the next videos. But for now, let's get to the next false claim. I've gotten rid of the Johnson Amendment.
And we've really helped because I've gotten rid of the Johnson Amendment. Ministers and preachers and rabbis and whoever it may be, they can speak.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't speak politically before. Now you can.
The Johnson Amendment, which prohibits tax-exempt organizations, including churches, from endorsing or opposing political candidates, is still in effect. While Trump signed an executive order in 2017 directing the IRS to exercise discretion in enforcement, it did not repeal the amendment or change the law. Religious leaders have always been free to speak on moral or social issues, but they are still legally barred from explicitly endorsing or opposing political candidates from the pulpit without risking their organization's tax-exempt status. Trump supporters may argue that his executive order provided protection for religious leaders by limiting IRS enforcement, creating a perception that they have more freedom to address political topics. They could justify his claim as symbolic of his commitment to protecting religious liberty. However, this is not a symbolic claim. Trump declared the Johnson Amendment removed, and that is unequivocally false. The amendment remains federal law, and clergy must still navigate its restrictions carefully. So nothing's changed then. Well, alright. Now let's ask ChatGPT to break down the last false claim of the day, and here it is. The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China, nothing, and Russia, nothing, and India, nothing.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China, nothing, and Russia, nothing, and India, nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States.
This claim is false on multiple levels. The Paris Climate Agreement is a voluntary framework where nations set their own climate goals, called Nationally Determined Contributions or NDCs, and no country, including the US, is obligated to pay specific costs under the agreement. The assertion that China, Russia, and India would pay nothing is equally false, as these nations have pledged ambitious climate goals. China committed to peaking emissions by 2030 and expanding renewable energy, while India pledged to generate 50% of its energy from non-fossil sources by 2030, efforts requiring substantial investments that directly refute the claim they contribute nothing. Furthermore, the $1 trillion figure is entirely baseless, a political exaggeration with no credible grounding. Trump supporters may claim the agreement unfairly burdens the US, but this ignores the historical responsibility of developed nations for global emissions and their stronger financial capacity to lead on solutions. This statement doesn't just miss the mark, it misleads entirely, distorting the nature of the agreement to undermine its goals and commitments. So the United States is not obligated to pay any specific costs. Other countries contribute in ways besides money, and even the $1 trillion figure is false. I mean, what's really left of this claim? Alright, well, that was the last claim for today. As always, let me know in the comments which one surprised you, or maybe if you disagree that the claims are false. Feel free to share your thoughts below. And if you haven't watched the first part, be sure to click right here and check it out now. Thanks for watching, click on that pop-up, and I'll see you over there in just a moment.